This is probably more of a general statement, and it's been asked by a few of you, and it's around concerns with Perth on its reliance or over-reliance on the mining or commodities economy, right? Is Perth still overexposed to the mining economy, and is it potentially still going to be thrown around by peaks and troughs or booms and busts in the mining industry? So there have been a few of in the last recent weeks where obviously Perth has been a large part of our focus the last 12 or 18, 24 months. And the odd person, I guess 18 or 24 months ago, when we were really picking the bottom of that cycle, when we've had some really good growth since, but Perth wasn't really mentioned much. 24 months ago, we were very early adopters to the Perth market, and we had a lot of pushback, a lot of concern from individuals about why Perth. And it hasn't been happening as much since, okay? And even one of you in particular, rejected Perth overall, the investment thesis for Perth, and chose Adelaide in preference, okay? When you look at Perth, you have to, it's more similar to somewhere like Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane than it is to Adelaide. Adelaide is less than half the size. Adelaide has very low population growth, a lot of old money, it's very conservative. Perth is a global city. Adelaide's not. Perth is focusing outwards to the world and not inwards to Australia, okay? It is a true world-class global city, and it is emerging as Australia's third largest city. So Perth is tipped, and this is the context to view Perth. Obviously, yes, it has a large dependence on commodities to mining as a backbone of its economy. But since the last boom and bust, over the last decade, Perth has been investing extremely heavily in diversifying the economy and diversifying public amenity. And you have to look at the underlying changes of the city. It has turned from a backwater, a big mining town, I guess a tradie haven, into a true global city. You have people coming straight into Australia, into Perth, because it is closest to Southeast Asia and into the subcontinents, etc. And they love it and they stay. They don't move to the eastern seaboard. Okay, and that's what we're trying to tap into here. You've had just recently the state government announce another $1.3 billion so this is state government, to fund diversification of the economy. This is the core focus, and this has been happening now for the last decade. You go into the marina, the CBD, all the waterfront areas of Perth, and they have been investing very, very heavily into turning this into a world-class city. And remember, with the population growth, very strong population growth as a region overall, and with this diversification, with this investment spend and population growth forecasts, Perth is tipped to be larger than Brisbane going forth towards 2050. Okay, that shows you the context I think that Perth needs to be held in. It's not a Brisbane, it's not an Adelaide, it is a Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. Okay, it is a world-class city as Brisbane is now considered, and it is emerging very quickly. Obviously, we do have reliance on iron ore demand. This has been a less and less of an impact as years go on, and it's a very clear focus from the state government to continue to investing in this diversity. We see it. So we see an evening out of its exposure to mining. We see the emergence of a middle class that is not reliant on mining whatsoever. They're reliant on technology, on property itself, on state government-backed initiatives, and on government employment. And this is an entire new class of residents that have been moving into the Perth area for the last 10 years that have nothing to do with mining. And you've got to look at the areas that they're potentially moving into. And these are the segments of the market that are really moving forward. That middle to upper, the newer regions of the city, which would typically have a very strong tie into mining, are overexposed still, but there is an emergent class of property in Perth that has a far less impact or relationship to mining and iron ore. And this is the class of property that we're focusing on. So remember, we are not buying shares in Perth. We're not buying shares in Adelaide. We're not attaching ourselves to a Perth property index. We are buying very strategic properties in very tactical strategic locations. And we are looking at diversity of employment and future diversity of construction in those areas and the emergent class of people that are moving towards Perth without any ties to the mining industry. That is a very important point. For us, right now, the data coming out of Perth for predictive growth is essentially the strongest in the country, especially for a capital city, far stronger than Adelaide. And so that definitely needs to be part of the risk and reward scenario, is that 0 to 3, 0 to 5 year growth expectation, and comparing that to somewhere like Adelaide that might be at the top of the cycle. So hopefully that answers those general questions there around Perth and the you know, we've done 2 videos on this in the last year or so with the Perth market on our YouTube channel, hopefully providing a little bit of context there. Now I know